Good afternoon and welcome to today's Power of Knowing webinar, Living Well as We Age. Understanding comes from knowing, and aging is a part of our life. We can be empowered to age well by knowing the options and resources that are available to support our journey. This webinar will focus on healthcare and financial planning that can be important to do sooner rather than later for ourselves and our loved ones. This free webinar series, called The Power of Knowing, was created by AuthoriCare Collective, which empowers people to be active participants in their care journey, enabling them to live on their own terms through personalized support for mind, body, and spirit. To get us started, please welcome our moderator, Risa Hanow. Risa serves as clinical and community educator at AuthoriCare Collective and is also a member of the Cone Health Ethics Committee. She is a licensed clinical social worker. Risa, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today. Amber Cornwell. Amber is a certified financial planner and financial advisor. Amber has the experience and resources to help clients with a range of financial needs and has worked in the financial industry for 16 years. Amber's experience and superior financial planning tools allow her to offer expert assistance to groups, couples, and individuals. Welcome, Amber. And Matrina Knight. Matrina has over 25 years of experience in nursing and healthcare, working mostly with older adults and their families as they face the challenges that can come with aging. Matrina focuses on being an advocate and helping patients and their loved ones navigate the complex health system, including things such as home safety, transitions of living, and hospital stays. Welcome. We also would like to know a bit about our participants. So the best way for us to do that is we have two polling questions today. The polling questions are anonymous. You will see them on your screen. The first one is, who is joining us today? They are multiple choice, so go ahead. We know many of us fill many different roles at the same time. And the second question that we have in our poll, we'll get to in a moment, as we look at, wow, we have a great distribution of people in terms of who is joining us, about an equal number of people over 65 and under 65. Many people are caregivers, many are advocates, and lots of people working in the healthcare profession and human services, and also the spiritual guide area, and patients themselves. So thank you for that. Our second question, our second polling question is a yes or no question. And that one is whether or not you are currently engaged in healthcare or financial planning. And I don't know if we can get that one up on the screen for everybody to participate in. Oh, I see we don't have that one loaded in, which is fine. We will assume that many of us joining today are either ourselves, hopefully, thinking about financial planning and also thinking about healthcare planning. It might be for ourselves or it might be for our loved ones. I want to make mention that while we have our conversation, you'll probably hear about a number of resources. And I want you to feel comfortable that you don't need to take notes, because everyone's going to get an email that will have not only access to the recording of today's webinar, but also a listing of the resources that we mentioned. So you'll be getting those by email tomorrow. The other thing is that you can make use of the Q&A box and send in questions for Amber and Matrina while we are having our conversation, and we will try to answer as many of those as possible during our time together.
Risa, I do have that second poll ready, and I'm sorry it wasn't prepared.
Okay, no, that's great. It'll give us a good sense. So just, are you currently for yourself or for others involved in some sort of planning? Lots of people. Yes, yes, yes. Wow, well over 65%. Yeah, going, look at that. Wonderful. Thank you. So over 65% of people say that they are currently involved in financial planning of some sort, which is wonderful, because I bet, Amber, you'd say we all should be, right?
Yes.
So thank you for participating in that. We want to go ahead. Matrina, I recognize that this is a big question, right? And there's lots for us to talk about. But when we think about healthcare and aging, what are some of the most important areas, or maybe the most important buckets, for us to focus on for ourselves and our loved ones?
Okay, well, Risa, thank you for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join all of us today. So the two topic areas that I'm going to cover, which do have a lot of buckets underneath of them, are background factors that play a role in our options for care, and then what option of care actually fits best for you. And so as I said, we have time today, but I am condensing a lot of information in a short amount of time. So as Risa said, you'll get it after, and any resources that I should mention. So I'm just going to jump right in and get started. So what I'd love to do is start out with a question. If you suddenly received a serious health diagnosis today, how prepared are you and your family to cope with that challenge? And I think that's something real to think about, because none of us expect to happen to us. But the unfortunate reality is that at some point, a healthcare crisis is going to come to all of us or someone we love, be it being faced with a chronic condition, maybe needing a major surgery, or the sudden transition of care due to a medical condition that you've gone from living in your private home and suddenly you're in a skilled nursing facility. So that's a pretty big deal. And then it's scary to think that only 30% of older adults in the United States have completed their advanced directives. So when I refer to advanced directives, what I'm talking about is documents that you would fill in ahead of time, making your medical wishes known, along with healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, which I'm sure Amber may talk to you about. So having these documents ready, so should that crisis come, that your wishes are known and your family's not in a situation where everyone's looking at each other and no one knows what to do. So when you're thinking about those, please make the time to have the conversation about what you want. It can be an uncomfortable conversation. It can be a pretty unwelcome conversation sometimes, as we look at family dynamics and no one wants to think about their mortality and no one wants to have it, but it is necessary to be prepared. Have the documents prepared, and don't consider what age you are. I know we're talking about older adults today and options for care, but it's really important regardless of what your age is. And then the last thing I want to point out in that area is have multiple copies. You may be away somewhere, something may happen, and I promise you don't want Joe going over to your sock drawer to find the document you filled out 15 years ago because you're in Florida somewhere and they need those documents in order to provide you the care you're hoping for. So with that said, Prepare for Care is a great program that is offered on the National Council of Aging. You can use that to prepare your documents. They have a download for each state, And another great option is using an elder care attorney. It's a more personalized service. So whatever best fits you, but I encourage you strongly to go ahead and get this in place, because all of these factors will play a role in the options for care as you move along. And as we talk of moving along, I'm talking of moving along the care continuum. And what that refers to is the healthcare services that you're going to receive throughout your life, from the beginning of life to the end of life, starting with prevention, early intervention, going all the way on to chronic care and, end of life care. But that care continuum and where you sit on it will depend some of your options of care that will be available for you. Our habits and behaviors can play a very significant role in how well we age and how much money we spend on aging. Healthcare is expensive. More than 80% of older adults in this country have at least one chronic condition, be it something like diabetes, arthritis, depression. So one of our best options for care is, I'm going to say, prevention. And I say that because regular screenings can detect chronic diseases early on. The earlier we detect them, the easier they are to treat, the less expensive. And I think all of our personal goal is not to spend all of our money on healthcare, but I'm hoping to spend some of mine on retirement someday, going on vacations with our families. So the better care you take care of yourself along the way, the better place you're going to end up in an option for care, and the finances you'll have to enjoy your quality of life. So the next thing, as we get into this area of, options for care, we're going to talk about living arrangements. And where you end up really depends on, what do you want? What are your needs and personal preferences? What are your resources to pay for that? And what kind of support do you have, be it family or friends? So that plays a big part in where you go next. So the first option for care that we're going to look at today is becoming a very popular one. It has been for a while, but we're going to discuss aging in place. If you have not heard this term before, basically what it means is remaining in your own home and bringing in support that you may need as you choose to age in that place. You might start out being very independent, and as life progresses, you may need healthcare services to come to the house. We are at a place that more adults are going to be over the age of 65 than children. This is the first time in history in this country, and that's approaching pretty quickly around 2030, 2032. Another factor playing into aging at home is, for the first time in over about 50 years, people living in multi-generational homes have quadrupled. So this is a big resource of how do we address that? Is that an advantage or disadvantage for some families? It can be less expensive than moving to a retirement community, aging in place, depending on modifications you need to make to your home. It can also allow individuals to maintain independence, familiar surroundings, and possibly less isolation, which is a really big factor as we age. So we need to put all of that in. So I'm going to go through a quick little list of things as we talk about aging in place. It's a lot. It's a big bundle. So as I go through these, please be thinking about, can I do this to my house? Is this something that will work for me? So you need to consider a home assessment, proximity to healthcare, medication management, transportation, a primary care provider or a direct primary care provider. And I'll explain what that is. Meals, how are you getting them? Maintenance, financial tasks, technology, and then bringing in support services. So if that didn't make you too tired and you think this is still an option that will work for you, as I said, it is becoming very popular. We're on the brink of a silver tsunami. And the other reality is, having enough facilities to accommodate our aging population is going to be tough. So circling back, just a couple factors for those things that you need to have in place in order to make that an option. The home assessment. You need to consider every 15 seconds, an adult age 50 plus has a serious fall and ends up in the emergency room. That's every 15 seconds. So when you're considering this, you need to look at, can I have a bedroom on the first floor? Can I have a zero entry shower? Do I need a ramp put in? So lots of factors go into it. There are great resources and checklists online that you can download. Do that, or you can hire a professional to come look at your living space and they can help assess it for you. Next, as I was mentioning, proximity to healthcare. If you have a chronic disease condition and you know that's going to progress, you need to think about where you live and how close you are to your providers, because as you age, transportation can get more difficult. If you need frequent medical care, you don't want to be living remotely all on your own. Telemedicine is wonderful. It's one of the great things that came out of the pandemic. So that is a helpful tool, but it won't fill all your needs. Medication management. That's a big one. Every day, 750 people are hospitalized for a medication error. So we could talk about that all day. So what I'm going to say to that is there's lots of great technology now. It is feasible to do it in your home. And I think that our pharmacy systems are doing an excellent job promoting that independence at home and providing the tools we need. My one tip for that, please stick with using one pharmacy. When you use multiple pharmacies, say a prescription was discontinued or the dose was changed, the pharmacies don't collaborate with each other. So you could be picking them both up and not realize that you're not actually supposed to be taking them both. And that's how we end up in the hospital. Transportation, big challenge for our seniors. There's a resource at the end that you can look at. Having a primary care physician or a direct primary care practice. We don't always have one when we're younger. Maybe we don't have the need for it. It is something I suggest you get on board as you're aging, because when you decide where your option for care is, taking your medical history with you is a really important thing, and having that available. A direct primary care practice is a little different model. So that is for, you may have insurance or you may not have insurance, but it's a great option for individuals who do not have insurance and maybe they're under the age of 65 and not using Medicare. It's a plan that's based on a monthly payment, and you have as many visits as you need, a reduction in prescription costs, and as well as testing. So there's information on that as well, but great options that we're coming to. As I said, meal delivery services are important, home maintenance, financial tasks, and home health and home care can be support services if aging in place is the option for you. And then last, you want to think about your technology, which we have a lot of great technology now, and it can, you can be living in one state, mom's in another state. You can put sensors on the medication now, chair sensors, bed sensors. They're not just things that we use in the hospital system any longer. They are being made to be used at home, with the reality of where we're going with our aging. So that's another great option. Everybody's censored more than we want, but do think about that and exploring those options. Next, what I want to talk about is other options for care outside of that. So the ones I'm going to go through, what I want to preface it with is I do encourage you to go see some of these options first. And as we said in the beginning, please do it sooner than later. Don't wait for a family member to have a stroke and, oh my gosh, where do we go? What do we do? Planning is half the battle. It's a very emotional time when you have these things happen. And this is not how you want to spend your time when that time comes. And unfortunately, as I said, naturally, we're all going to have some kind of condition at some point, more than likely. So with that said, the first one I'm going to talk about is an option for care, but it's not a living arrangement, and that is adult day health. We have some staggering statistics in our country right now for caregivers. More than 1 in 5 people care for a family member or friend or neighbor right now. 61% of those caregivers are still working, and 7 out of 10 do it with no paid help. That's a tough call, and it's a big strain on the caregivers, emotional, physical, and financial well-being when they're missing work to come home and take care of someone. So I am a big proponent of adult day health. I hope that we have many, many more programs like this coming along, because as this population is aging, we really are going to need it. And so with that said, more people are choosing to age in place, so we need more adult day health. And it's also a great option so our caregivers aren't getting burned out. And another good feature of adult day health is these programs help maintain the health. And as we talk about our healthcare and money, the need for more intensive care reduces when they're in these programs, as well as it can decrease the cost of your long-term care. So the next area I want to talk about is independent living in a retirement community. So when we look at these, once again, go see them sooner than later. All different kinds of communities, all different kinds of amenities, but they're designed to support seniors who can live independently, but want that community surrounding. So with that, you have transportation, maintenance, wellness, housekeeping, security, all bundled under one roof. It's a really great feature if this is something that you think will fit your needs. And once you're in an independent retirement community, some of these communities are standalone. Others have a transition of care through that care continuum we were talking about, that should you develop another condition, you could transition to assisted living. And it's similar to independent living. However, you have support from some healthcare services such as medication management. You have your meals planned. Just bear in mind, and other amenities, but if you go to assisted living, they do not provide skilled care. So should your health worsen over that time, you will transition further and to what we call skilled nursing or long-term care, or you may have heard it referred to as a nursing home, but it's all pretty much the same concept. That's 24-hour care with licensed professionals, nurses, medical professionals. You can get therapies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, typically in these areas. And that is pretty much a long-term situation. So somewhat a middle ground between a hospital and having home health. So I encourage you to consider how your housing needs may change over time, reevaluate, and take a look at those. So as far as options for care, that's what I have. I do want to end on a footnote of, we were talking about resources, and the National Council on Aging put out a report earlier in March that $30 billion, and I said billion dollars, are left on the table every year of benefits that people are qualified for but not enrolled in. So when you visit their website, take a look, because you never know what's out there that you had no idea might fit your needs and be out there to help your finances. So as a recap, we talked about lifestyle and the impact it makes on the choices you'll have, pre-planning, reevaluate your legal documents, and your choices of living related to your health status.
Thank you. That was tremendous. And as you said, a lot of information, and we're, each individuals, and we have different needs, different life realities. But those resources that we will include in the follow-up email will be so useful for everyone. Also so important, Amber, for us to think about, of course, are the dollars attached, right? How do we begin to plan for and even think about what might be necessary and what is possible given our own individual situations as we begin to think about what we might need to financially support our needs as we age. And just some ideas and thoughts and an overview of just how we focus on those needs that we might have right now and the needs that we very well may have in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Risa. So yes, it is, finances can be overwhelming, especially like Matrina was talking about. We're trying to care for family. Maybe we're involved in our career. Folks in my stage of life are often caring for aging parents. And so, Matrina, the information that you gave was so helpful for so many of us. So thank you for that. So as I prepared for today, I knew that there would be a range of ages, and the poll certainly confirmed that. When we talk about aging well, I remember, when I was 30, I thought I was aging, right? So as Matrina said, the earlier we start on all of this, the better. So I hope there's some younger folks on here. I know there's plenty of folks 65 and older. And then I know that there's a range of incomes on here. There are folks that are potentially living on minimum wage. And there may be some folks making six figures and maybe own your own business. So I really kind of sat and thought through it, and I thought, okay, what could I share that would really be impactful regardless of your income and regardless of your age? So those are the things that we're going to talk about. And it's really 4 action items. And somebody said action a minute ago. I don't remember, Matrina, maybe it was, she said start sooner than later. So all of these are things that we want to start sooner than later. And similar to Matrina, as we move into finances away from healthcare, I want to start with a question just to get you thinking about it, because often I know a lot of folks on this call are in healthcare just because of the poll that she took. And I think there was a spiritual guide and some other folks. And you guys get so busy taking care of everybody else that you often don't afford yourself the luxury of taking care of yourself. So my question for you is, when is the last time that you've really assessed your financial situation? I like to call it managing your short-term cash as one element of it. And for most of us on this call, our short-term cash is our paycheck. It's our money that's coming in every week or every 2 weeks or every month. When is the last time that you've kind of taken inventory of what's coming in and what's going out? Now, for some of you on the call, since we do know some of you are over 65, some of your money is your Social Security. Even more importantly, for those of you not on Social Security, do you know what Social Security is going to provide? So just think about that for a minute as we move in, about when maybe you could start to take that inventory. Because number one is going to be, you have to quit spending your money and you have to start planning your money. Matrina just talked about a whole lot of things that you can plan your money for, but there are a lot of other things out there that we have goals and dreams about. I think right now what many of us do, and I have to watch myself, is we pull a card out. It's a debit card. Maybe we're not putting it on our credit card, but we're just going around and we're buying gas and we're buying groceries and we're spending our money. And as we get older, one of the things that we have to get under control is our spending and learning how to plan our money. I like to say, I'm going to tell my money where to go. And so let's just kind of pause on number one for a minute. And let's talk about number two, because I think when you put two and one together, it kind of helps you see the importance of it. So number two is understanding that when you have a goal, right? When you've kind of identified what's important to you, then it really helps you to focus. It gives you purpose, and then it gives you motivation, right? As Matrina was talking about, as she went through the different types of care, some of you on this call may really like that idea of being in a retirement community. But have you researched that? Do you know the cost of that? That's a big number to plan for, right? And so we have to know what our goals are. For some of you on this call, your goal is just to have an emergency account. You want to be able to not have to pull out a credit card when the car breaks down. I like to think of the things that Matrina said and the things that I'm saying are a lot around risk management as much as they are around planning. We can plan our very best, right? But we've also got to have a backup. And so you're just trying to get an emergency account set up, or some of you on this call, you want to be able to pay for your children's college and they not have any debt when they're done. Others of you out here want to, I don't know, maybe you want to travel. We all have different goals, but once you can kind of focus in on it, and I'll give you just an example from my own life. I don't know if you guys can relate to it, but we'll try to relate to it in the end. Back in 1995, when I was 25, I got engaged, and I did not come from a family with money. I wasn't going to be able to just start picking out my flowers and my cake and just making this day my dream. What my husband and I were going to be paying for most of it. So this was a goal. And what I'm really trying to get you to think about is how a goal can motivate you. So once I knew what my goal was, right, I was very motivated for that. It gave me purpose and focus, and the creative juices start flowing and things start organizing for you. And there were many things that went on, but one of the things I'll share is I realized that if I got married during the holidays, that I completely could put a zero next to my flower and decoration budget, right? The church back then in 95, everybody got married in church. And so I knew the stairs I was going to come down would be decorated and the pews would be decorated. And so why I share that story with you is, what is your wedding? What is it that is something that you can get purpose and emotional about? The topic for today is aging well. So I know the retirement communities, what your retirement's going to look like, having enough to pay for these things. So when you think about that and you go back to number one, which is I'm going to start telling my money what to do instead of just spending my money, I think that will give you the motivation and the kind of the intention and purpose for why you're going to do that. So number one, we're taking an inventory of our money, our short-term cash, our paycheck. We're going to research what's Social Security going to give me in the future, or how is that part of my budget now? And then two, we're going to tie that to what our goal is. So when we move on to number three, now what we want to start thinking about is what decisions have we made? What did we identify as our goal? And how can we start to automate that? So for example, you said, Amber, yes, I got on here today. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And I know that my goal is to have that emergency account, right? So one way that you can automate that is you can go down to your payroll office today at your job and say, don't send all my money to my main account. Could I divert $25 or $100 to another account so that I can start to build that up? And I haven't found an employer yet that doesn't allow you to send money to multiple locations. If you're on here and it's college, you want to pay for your children's college, don't just contribute to the 529 plan when you have extra money. Have that automatically come out of your account. If what's important to you is starting to do this inventory of what you might need to stay in your home versus going to a retirement community. What's it going to cost to make these different adjustments to your home, and how are you going to pay for it? How can you automate that savings? Maybe your dream is that really nice retirement community. How are you saving for that? Have you sat down with a plan? Or that takes more than just a little automation. That takes some real planning. And so have you done those things? And for those of you on the call, maybe you've already gotten your short-term cash in order. You already know what your goals are. How can you automate maybe paying your bills, right? Because one of the things Matrina talked about is that if you're going to live in your home, and maybe as you start to decline, having your bill pay kind of automated, make sure that those important insurance bills or different bills that are going to be coming into the home get paid automatically. And hey, if technology is a challenge for you, get that grandchild or that niece or nephew to come in and help you with that. And really what my goal here is, as we talk about finances and so many people feel overwhelmed with it, what I am trying to do is to move that one off your list. And you go, well, Amber, I'm living a paycheck to paycheck. That's on my list all the time. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to take inventory. And so maybe your goal to automate things is going to take a little bit longer. Maybe it'll be next year or the next year before you can really start breathing a little. But if you don't start today, then you won't find yourself in a year or two where you can. You're going to kind of be in the same place, right? And so then fourth and final is now we've done the work. We've taken the time to do the work. So now we've moved that kind of mental financial thing to the side. And so now we can just revisit it once a year. Even myself working in financial arena and doing planning, I get off track. So as I talked about, we got married at the end of the year. So 12/30 is our anniversary. And one of the things we like to do at the end of the year is we take an inventory. What went well last year, personally and professionally? How are our finances? Have I been telling my money to go to the right places? And then we tighten it back up, right? We've got it. What's my goal? What's my purpose? What direction am I going in? And I don't know, everybody has different goals. For me, a lot of folks have fed into my life and served me over the years. So I have some important causes that I want to give to. And also, if Risa calls me up tomorrow and she wants to take a trip, I want to have some money. I'm not a jewelry person. My house doesn't have all of the HGTV colors. I still have brown cabinets. But if it's travel or some causes that are important to me, I want to make sure I'm telling my money where to go so that those things are going to be a reality for me. So just a quick recap, and then we'll open it up for questions. 1, do the inventory. Where's my money coming in, going out? We're going to start telling it what to do. Tie that with your goals so that you have the motivation to actually follow through. Thirdly, automate what you can. That's going to make it most successful, and relieve your mind so that you can focus on other things. And then fourth, check in on it once a year. All right. Thank you.
Again, tremendous. I encourage anybody who has questions, please submit them. I'm sitting here thinking about the meeting of the healthcare and the finances, right? So we know that they are really very closely tied, and that when we think about what our personal goals are, coupled with our personal life experience and situation and our health situation, one of the things that comes to my mind, and you mentioned, Matrina, advanced care planning. The ability to talk about these issues with our trusted family members, whether they are family by blood, family by choice, so that others know what is in our heart and what our desire is, but also where our password access is and who can pay our bills if we are unable to do that. So really thinking about how it is that we focus on some of those conversations. And the other thing that comes through for me is the mention of money that's left on the table. The thought of, I know Amber, through if we are working, are we contributing to the different opportunities we have through our employment, to different funds, to different savings? But I'm also thinking about if we're veterans, are we aware of those services? Might we be eligible for Medicaid or for other services? And so, Matrina, I'm thinking about, for healthcare, obviously, it can be extraordinarily expensive. And I'm thinking about, is it better if staying at home is my goal? Do I start sooner rather than later, slowly making those adjustments, thinking about, can I have a bedroom downstairs? Do I think about, that bathroom, the shower entry? Do I start making, changes along the way so that I'm, positioning myself rather than when that fall happens from that staircase I see behind you?
So, Risa, that is a great question, and thank you. I am a planner. There is no such thing as too early. And the beauty of that is, let's do a case scenario where we have an individual who's perfectly healthy, running in marathons, everything's going well. And they're involved in an automobile accident and they are unfortunately paralyzed from the waist down. And this is, just a scenario, but the reality of that is that person could be 30 years old, be healthy for the rest of their life. So yes, making modifications along the way, we know who we are and we know what our preferences are. So if you have a mindset of, I'm never moving into a home, I want to live at my house forever, be it you have an accident or you're healthy, taking care of those modifications and having that plan in mind is a realistic plan. So yes, for example, several years ago, we redid our own bathroom. Our plan is to stay here. I didn't need a zero entry shower and I didn't need a 32-inch wide door. But I thought to myself, I never know. So, and I remember the installers coming and saying, you want what door? They really didn't understand what I was saying. And this was just 4 years ago. And I said, if I end up in a wheelchair, I want to be able to roll right in. I don't want to, it's going to cost me more to move my entire house than to modify this bathroom. So I hope that answers the question. Yes, modifications along the way are great. If it's something you can do and you intend to stay there and you have friends who are really great at this, invite them over, put some burgers on the grill, give everybody a job to do, and make those modifications as you go along. Because at the end of the day, if your situation changes, your house will have a better resale value because it's updated and maybe it's going to accommodate another multi-generational family who can use it.
That's a wonderful point. And I'm thinking, Amber, about the reality of, as we've mentioned, everybody is in a different situation of life. So not everybody has the ability to, put away that even $25 or $100. But we also know that when we plan, then we're creating those options, right? So the ability, give us some ideas. If I'm employed through my HR, I might have access to some financial planning assistance. If I'm already retired, where might I get some assistance? Who do we turn to so that we know what those options are? If I need to retire early and I need to think about disability, or how do I know where to turn? Who do I go to?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. So let's kind of talk about, first of all, what you said about, I don't have the money, right? I don't feel like I have the $25, or just, different financial situations. And if you give me just a moment, I want to tie it back in with something you asked and Matrina was talking about having these conversations. Often you'll find people in families with different financial situations. I have three sisters and a brother. We're all in different financial situations, and we were recently, it's over now, sadly, but we were recently in the caregiving mode for an adult family member, right? And so as we think about planning, and Matrina talked about having these financial conversations, if you're on this call today and it will be difficult, you need to get your family together and then find out, are we all on the same page with what mom and dad want, with what we want with our own children? Has everybody had kind of those hard situations? Because I found out that a lot of the financial burden was going to be on me. Maybe you're going to find out that your sister isn't in such a good situation, and how she may or may not be able to help with that. I know we're just talking about ourselves, but we also have to remember we have children who might have a burden from us, and then we have parents who may not have planned well, where we have to help financially. So just want to urge folks it's not fun, siblings are sometimes difficult to speak with, but get those conversations out so that you know how to plan. Back to Matrina, you can't plan enough or too early. So back to what you said about, okay, so how do I get this planning, right? So you mentioned there are some employers that offer these services through their retirement plan providers. So if you are employed, go to your benefits manager or your HR, or maybe you're new to that employer, the person that helped you get in the plan, and say, are there any kind of services available to me where someone would, especially the person you talked about who is unable to even save the $25, who can kind of handhold me through the budgeting process, right? Those of you who may not be working, you're disabled, or I forget what else you mentioned, maybe you're already retired. There are all kinds of planners out there that have different types of fee structures. And so the first thing I always like to tell people when it is related to finances is, who is a trusted friend or family member that you can go to and say, hey, have you ever used anybody to kind of help you do some planning? Is there somebody that you trust? And I don't know, I just, so that you don't have to go through the difficult process maybe of vetting someone, then using someone that somebody else in your family already trusts. There is going to be a resource that Reese is going to be sending out at the end. Is the I think it's Consumer Protection Agency. There are lots of online tools there where you can do some things on your own, as well as seek resources that are no cost. So again, do not let cost or the fact that you don't have any money at this point to really move forward be something that keeps you from starting the process. Because if you don't do it today, 2 years from now, you're going to wish that you did.
Yeah. And Matrina, I'm thinking about when we know that time is a resource, and you mentioned going and visiting facilities. If we're thinking about, trying to have an idea of what is in the particular community we live in, but it's not always possible for us to make those visits, or sometimes there really is that crisis where a loved one is hospitalized and we are needing to give some feedback about choices of facilities. And I'm thinking about, there are some online options that we can look at, right? That compare facilities from the state, provides us with some opportunity. It's, I know, not the same as going in person, but would that be helpful for us to make use of some of those websites that rate different healthcare entities when we're in this decision-making mode?
So to answer that, I think part of that, it comes back to a question. Can they be helpful? Possibly. I think we have to take a lot of things with a grain of salt. You don't know when someone rated a facility, sometimes it's done at an emotional time. Maybe they just lost a loved one and their rating of that facility is not necessarily the care that they received, but maybe the upset and the perception at the time. Because in hindsight, sometimes we look at things and go, I guess they did do a good job, but they just couldn't see. They didn't understand what was happening, maybe. So I know I put an emotional component into that. Yes, there are ratings out there. I'd be happy to pursue and share with you a website. I think a lot of great resources for things like this can come from AARP. They are very credible. And as we talk about, AARP costs between $12 and $16 a year. And you get a free cooler. And if you're not embarrassed that your neighbors know that you've applied and it's coming in your mail, then, but in all seriousness, they have great information, and that's probably someone I would tap into. And I'm sure there's some other websites that would provide that. Just going on general rankings, when you look them up and seeing that star, I wouldn't go by that, because we don't know the individuals that put that information in and why they did and when they did. So I would use something a little more credible than, I looked them up, I saw their number, they only had 2 stars. And the other thing based on that is facilities change. Regulations change and facilities change, and they do improve. And I think that overall in our healthcare system, we really are working hard to upgrade and get our facilities to the standards that we need them to be if they're not.
Right. You mentioned the silver tsunami, and I want to acknowledge that fact that we are talking about the large number of people in our country that are aging, that will be getting to retirement age. Now, not everybody has the means to retire at the point that they might want to. Not everybody has worked such that they'll have access to Social Security. I wonder, Amber, I would imagine that the Social Security Administration and like Department of Social Services and our Area Agency on Aging, some of those organizations can be very helpful for people who are really looking for some guidance and don't have an immediate connection to another organization.
Yes, I know you're going to give it out in the resources, but one of the things I mentioned is, you know, a lot of folks will say, well, I'm not sure if Social Security is going to be there for me. And we do a lot of Social Security seminars, and we think it will be there, at least in the near term. They'll do what they've done in the past. They're going to move out early retirement age, and they're going to move out regular retirement age. But yes, you can go out to SSA.org. That's just the Social Security Administration.org. They don't send statements out anymore, but if you don't know if you're going to get Social Security, this is a great resource to go out there and answer some questions and get that. For those of you on here who are divorced, maybe you don't qualify for your own Social Security. There's certain ways that you can get Social Security from your former spouse. It doesn't reduce their benefit. For those of you who didn't work and you're married, you can get a Social Security benefit from just be half of what your spouse is getting. So yes, there are lots of resources out there. And again, doing that research early, doing that planning as early as you can. I think I saw Paul put something up here. Planning creates options. I like to say planning creates choices. Get yourself educated.
Right. And so, Matrina, maybe as we begin to really look at the time and recognize that we're coming to the close, I think to piggyback on that is to learn and inform ourselves about what does our healthcare plan cover if we do have insurance? What does Medicare pay for, and what does Medicare not pay for? What does long-term care insurance pay for if we have it? What is available? I mean, it seems to me that we need to be informed about our coverage options, because that's going to tie closely to what is possible when we think about those choices of where we hope to age.
So help me understand, Risa, then what part of that question is it understanding your benefits you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm just saying that one of the things that seems to be important is that we understand what Medicare does cover. Medicare does not pay for an assisted living facility, or just to inform ourselves, part of that theme of having the knowledge of what is covered and what is not, and what we might be responsible for payment wise.
Okay, so in the resources that will be sent out, there is a link for that, and one of the resources, ironically, from April 10th to 14th, the National Council on Aging again is offering assistance with all of those questions, and they're offering a budget checkup. And it's, as I said, April 10th to 14th, and it's for local, not just government benefits, but local ones, and they can help you with that information. In general, when we look at that, insurance is not going to cover home care. It is private pay. And I looked up on a great tool called Genworth. They have a tool calculator where you can put in your zip code. It's really neat. You can put in your zip code and when you think you'll start needing care until when you'll need care. And it will do a cost calculation for you. And it does go over some of what's covered and what's not. But if you're looking at private home care, it's not going to be covered. Home care in general, because it's not a skilled service. Home health is covered by insurance and Medicare for a certain amount of time, depending on the diagnosis. And so there's a lot of different factors there. Let's look at if you were going to a skilled nursing facility, you have 100 days covered by Medicare. And after that, you have to start looking at how you're going to finance that, or what transition or what other program you're available for. So that's a pretty big deal if someone's had a significant health crisis and you're, well, what do I do after 100 days? And speaking then to where Amber, you have to have some kind of plan in place because it's not covered. And I think another important thing to remember with Medicare is sometimes I think people are under the impression that there's no pay-in, but there is a cost to it, and it's based on what your income is. So it's an important conversation to have, and once again, having it ahead of time. Personally, if I was, in my mid-50s, I would be starting to have these conversations so I can plan and see where my money is going to need to be when I retire.
Well, thank you both. You have beyond a wealth of information. For the participants, again, there'll be an email sent out that will have access to the recording from today, and so many of the resources that we mentioned. So please take time to review that, make use of that information. Also want to invite you to join us next month. On April 18th, we're going to be exploring the role of faith in end-of-life decisions, and we have a wonderful panel that will be joining us. So I want to say thank you to our panelists, thank you to our participants, and in closing, just to share a quote from Louise Hay, and it says, "Know that you are the perfect age. Each year is special and precious, for you shall only live it once. Be comfortable with growing older." And with that, I will say thank you, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Bye.